Hey everybody, welcome back to Plan Life Right. I'm your host, Kevin Ross, and today we're zooming in on obesity drug wars that are rattling Wall Street, healthcare, and your wallet. Nova Nordisk thought it had. They expected a regulatory ruling in May to wipe out the compounding pharmacy competition, clearing the field for drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy to dominate once again. But what happened next? Not quite what they expected. In many ways, the opposite. So, today we're going to unpack the ruling, the fallout, and why the next chapter of this $100 billion race may not favor front runner. So, on May 22nd, the FDA formally declared that semaglutide shortage is over, and that triggered a legal cutoff. Compounding pharmacies were no longer authorized to use their version of semaglutide unless it was chemically distinct. So on paper, that looked like a victory lap for Nova. They had lobbied for it. They were ready for it. They thought patients using cheaper compound versions would rush back into the brand names. But here's the rub. Compounders had already flooded the market ahead of the ruling, stockpiling product. Many still found legal workarounds by adjusting salt forms or surrounding non branded active pharmaceutical ingredients, PIs. Others just simply ignore the enforcement, confident that FDA would crack down hard on the smaller operators due to resource constraints. So, yes, there was a technical win, but it really hasn't stemmed the tide. So, according to Reuters, millions of Americans still rely on compounded GLP-1 because of cost, access, and convenience. And even after the ban took effect, compounders continued to advertise and sell to consumers via telehealth platforms. So Nova did see a 33% rebound in Wegovy prescriptions in the in the weeks after the ruling. That's really not uh, that significant. Wall Street wasn't really impressed. Why was that? Because Nova's profit margins didn't follow that same rebound. In fact, they cut their 2025 growth forecast from 21% to as low as 8%. So this isn't just about prescription volume, it's about how many of those scripts are discounted, covered, or profitable. So Nova had to offer up like $300 coupons, ramp up legal spending, and they're fighting an uphill battle with insurers and pharmacy benefit man. Baird put it pretty bluntly. They said the obesity drug bubble has popped. That doesn't mean demands are gone. It means expectations have deflated. Investors are now pricing in lower margins, higher legal costs, and a longer path to exclusivity. So, to win back ground, Nova's doing three things: putting legal pressure. So, they filed over 120 lawsuits against the compounders and even sent cease and desist to the telehealth platform. Some have complied, but others just pivoted or rebranded. Enforcement isn't airtight. NovaCare discounts facing mounting pressure from PBMs. They're giving consumers instant saving cards of up to 500 per month. That makes brand name Wagovia temporarily competitive, but it's burning cash. And they've got media campaigns. There's choose the real thing ads are all over TV and warning patients about safety risk of unregulated compounders. But public trust in big pharma, let's face it, it isn't actually soaring. And in many, they see the compounders as the little guy offering an affordable lifeline. This strategy is bold, but it's expensive. And more importantly, it assumes patients care more about labels than price. And that's a risky bet in today's healthcare landscape. Let's face it, do you get generic drugs when you're getting your monthly prescriptions, or are you getting the name brand because you feel like the name brand is better? Most people I know for myself, I'm getting the generics. I mean, it's 50, 60, 70% cheaper to get the generics, and that's what the insurance covers versus the name brand. So I think they've got a really tough road ahead here using that strategy. So let's take a look at the short term outlook. So the next 3 to 6 months, I think the prescription growth holds. That 33% rebound may translate into sustained recapture of compound users, especially if NovaCare's discounts continue. Um, but Reuters says the earnings overshadows guidance, and the analysts expect Nova to further reduce guidance when they report Q2 results on August 6th, lingering around that bottom end of 8, maybe up to 14%. So the wild cards out there, the compounder cliffs, let's call it, that supply from those older batches will eventually dry up. Once exhausted, compound compounded users must switch or vanish from the market. So how many will switch? That's really uncertain. The regulatory follow-up, should FDA start enforcement actions, compounded supplies could drop faster. Benefits That's going to benefit Nova, but that could also spark political and consumer backlash. As a matter of fact, I think the White House had mentioned uh, Trump had a buddy that went to Europe and got he called it the fat drug, I think, and said he could get it for $80 and it's $800 here. So I think if Nova goes down that road, they're going to get some political backlash from this, as well as the consumers. So those that are on the compounded products are going to really be screaming to their politicians that it's not fair. So more to stay tuned on that. So let's look at the mid and long term. So that 6 to 24 month window. The generic and international pressures, you're going to see more and more of that. So even with semaglutide patients through 2042, countries like India are they're on the verge of introducing generics sooner than what were anticipated. The U.S. pricing pressures via Medicare and patent challenges could intensify. And then there's as the competitive pressures escalate, Eli Lilly, Zepbound, and Mounjaro continue to outperform. And then you got the others like Pfizer and the oral GLP ones that are starting to enter this marketplace. So Nova leadership is really under a great deal of pressure. We've got a new CEO, um, Miser Dustar. Probably pronounce that name. He faces a major uh, incline. He's got a steep road ahead of him. He's got to restore investors' confidence. He's got to navigate this competition, and he's got to be driving down that cost. So, as Barron said, this is a real wake up call for Nova and the new CEO. So let's take a look ahead. So Nova's August earning reports could provide a short-term bounce, especially if they show another rise in new scripts. But long term, I think they've got some major headwinds. Let's break this down into three potential scenarios, okay? The regulatory squeeze. If the FDA starts enforcing the ban strictly, I kind of doubt, targeting major compounders and conducting surprise inspections, Nova could regain their dominance. But like I said earlier, that would also draw political heat for eliminating lower cost access. The advocacy groups are already preparing to push back. The market adapts. These compounders could increasingly use salt form semaglutide, which is technically different or shift to novel peptides that mimic GLP-1 activity. So this could create a gray market arms race. Novo would need to adapt or acquire to keep up. So there's potentially a pricing pivot if public pressure continues to mount. You might see Nova be forced to reduce list prices or face potential legislation like Medicare price caps. They've resisted this globally, but the US market is really watching close. I think the big question is, so where does this leave us? Nova's bet on May 22nd being the turning point has not played out as cleanly as they'd hoped. Compounding market may be wounded, but it's far from dead. So let's finish this up. Here's the truth. No one on Wall Street wants to say this out loud, but compounding wasn't the problem. Pricing was. And when patients are forced to choose between paying $1,349 a month, $300 from a compound, really not a hard decision. The May 22nd ruling was a legal maneuver, not a solution. We're witnessing a shift. Power is moving away from the monopolistic drug pricing, and it's really moving towards decentralization, consumer first access. And maybe, just maybe, that's a good thing. If you're a patient, a provider, or an investor, pay attention to the battle behind the headlines because the next big healthcare revolution may not come from a pharmaceutical boardroom. It might come from a compounder, lab coat, working quietly, offering a better deal. I'm Kevin Ross, and this has been another episode of Plan Life Right. Don't just react, get informed, stay ahead, and always plan life